And it said, I don't want to just believe, I want to know. And I believe that mindset is what's starting to surface with a lot of people. We've been told to believe and have faith, just believe, just have faith for 2,000 years. And people are, they talk about how attendance in church is down. A lot of people are searching, they want to know. They don't want to just believe, they want to know. And these messages and teachings that Wilma Jean received from these spirit teachers, this is proof, real proof of the existence of a spiritual realm.
Hello there and welcome to episode 129 of Toward a Better Life. This is Kevin Pennell, your host. And if you're visiting for the first time, welcome. And if you've been with me a few times, hi, welcome back. This is a podcast that features like-minded people sharing their stories, ideas, and activities on what we can all do to generate a better life around the world, individually and collectively. Today's world, well, it does show area for improvement. Let's just leave it with that. And it's in need of seeking balance, harmony, compassion, and kindness on so many levels, personally, culturally, spiritually, to name a few. But it begins with each one of us doing our own personal work as individuals to create a better life for ourselves. When we do it for ourselves, well, it just has a tendency to work around those that associate with us, and it's like the proverbial domino effect, isn't it? And it's what I like to share on this podcast from around the world, seeking others of the same spirit, heart, and mind. It's a platform or a school, a venue to begin and continue your journey to wholeness and harmony. I also offer the opportunity to share your prose, music, poetry, or storytelling on the show. Now, so please do subscribe to the program Toward a Better Life if you haven't done so already through your favorite podcast platform. Keep following for weekly magical insights on earth-based spirituality, self-development, self-care, and other really cool stuff, I think. Also, remember to support the show by leaving a review on Apple and Spotify podcast. It only takes a minute, and it really is appreciated. Please do visit my website, towardabetterlife.com. You can also contact me to learn more about a free discovery call. It's a way that you can begin your journey toward a better life. Send all your inquiries to me, kevin@towardabetterlife.com. Well, let's get on with it. Today I'm chatting with Michael McAdams. Michael is a lifelong seeker of spiritual truth and co-author of An Angel Told Me So. This compelling book offers a collection of messages and teachings dictated directly from spirit, teachers, and angels. Now, Michael's dedication to bridging the physical and spiritual realms has provided profound insights into many and established him as a trusted voice in the spiritual communication realm. In An Angel Told Me So, Michael shares the remarkable experiences of his late mother, Wilma Jean Jones, who received messages from spirit teachers, from more than 22 years. Now, these teachings provide a roadmap, if you will, for personal spiritual development, offering actionable steps to recognize and interpret messages from beyond. Michael's insights empowers many to explore spiritual potential and find comfort in understanding life beyond this physical plane. Michael's work has touched countless readers, providing comfort and charity and clarity in understanding life beyond the physical plane. His appearances have drawn interest from spiritual seekers and skeptics alike, as he invites everyone into a dialogue that balances faith, reason, and personal discovery. In this episode, we're exploring the challenges of connecting with the spiritual realm. Now, the insights about to be shared in this chat can help you to unlock innate abilities to communicate with the other side. So let's get going and let's move along with Michael McAdams. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to get into some really cool stuff. Listeners, you know that we usually get into some pretty cool stuff anyway, but Michael has been noted as a trusted voice in spiritual communication. And you've heard me, and as well as some of the other guests that have talked over the years, that the spiritual world is around us, and we are surrounded so often by, call them what you will. You can call them guides, you can call them helpers, you can call them angels, you can call them whatever you want. You can call them your friends because they probably are, but they're all around us. But sometimes we may be a little apprehensive about, how do I get in touch with them? How do I communicate with them? That's where I'd like to go today. Does that make sense to you, Michael?
It does. It does. And it's as natural as waking up in the morning. It's that
Yes.
easy.
Hmm. And they're all around us. I find that one of the things that's very helpful to me, and it kind of keeps my mindset, and how often we hear that one of the premier points in our spiritual walk is to walk with an attitude of gratitude. And when I see something out of the ordinary that takes place, the first thing I would typically try to remember to say is, "Thank you, dear spirits," because it's obvious that they had a hand in it. So,
I agree.
yeah.
I agree. And that was actually my mother's favorite expression.
Oh, really?
Anytime that a spirit teacher, spirit guide would share information where advised something that would happen or was going to happen, and it did, she would always say, "Thank you, spirit."
Hmm.
And their joy is in our recognition of their existence.
I like
And
that.
the more that we can appreciate and recognize their appearance in our lives, the more that they're willing to show up and do what they can do for us.
And that's it. The more we can appreciate, the more they're going to show up. And I even in my meditation times, most of the time when I do my meditation work, I usually seek out a couple of primary guides that I have that have been with me for years. And we're always together and we always smile and we always hug and we always have a good time. So tell us a little bit about Michael and how you began this path. I think that would be pretty good.
Well, I was actually brought up in a foundation of faith, church-based, Bible-based.
Hmm.
I was brought up in a Pentecostal church, pretty strict, literal interpretation of the Bible. My mother was extremely religious, daily reader of her Bible. My grandmother pastored a small Pentecostal church just north of Cincinnati. My uncle was a fiery Pentecostal pastor, and he
Mm.
founded churches in Florida, Kentucky, and Ohio.
Hmm.
And I had attended church, Sunday school, had that background of faith, but I always had questions. I just always felt that there had to be more, had to be. Turns out there is. And I was really the one that had gotten my mother involved in the spiritual material. Um, she had concerns because she was, and a lot of people, especially those with a foundation of faith, the Bible says, "Beware of soothsayers."
Mm.
And a lot of people well, I don't know if I want to deal with spirits or phantoms, and we're not dealing with that. These are spiritual teachers, spirit teachers, master teachers, spirit guides, the same thing as angels, archangels, guardian angels.
Hmm.
And we're all born with the innate ability to receive, and we're born assigned with our own spirit teachers that work with us, and walk with us throughout our entire life.
And that's a big absolute. And it's something that I've thought about often, when did they really start with us? And I truly do believe, Michael, that, and you can affirm this, or we can open up into a discussion, but I really do believe that my guide, helper, whatever, I had some that were primarily either assigned or we chose to have them with us. And the moment that we were brought into being, I believe that person was there.
Actually, there is, are you familiar at all with the Urantia book?
No.
That's interesting. That's advanced material. It's my light reading, 2,107 pages.
I like it already.
And you don't read it like a novel. It's a
Mhm.
series of papers that are numbered and titled, transmitted through an individual in 1935, first published in 1955, been translated into 16 languages, over 4 million copies in print. But there is a section in there that talks about personalized thought adjusters.
Hmm.
And it says that at the age of our first moral decision, when we make a decision that shows that we know right from wrong, and it's normally about the age of 4 to 4.5 years old, that we are then assigned a personalized thought adjuster,
Hmm.
spirit teacher, guardian angel, whatever term, people are comfortable with. And that personalized thought adjuster will stay with us for life
Hmm.
and help us on our way, help us to make decisions, advise, guide, direct, warn. And that allows us to have the comfort and confidence that we're not alone, that we are presented with these spirit teachers that share our existence.
And so I recognize, and the listeners have heard me talk about it before, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but the first time I was really, I want to say, introduced to this primary guide that I have is when I was actually in college. And interestingly enough, Bible college. And I was working as a janitor in an elementary school, which was perfect. I worked for 4 hours and I studied for 4 hours. And I remember distinctly one instance when I was cleaning the music room out beyond the campus itself. And the campus back then, believe it or not, we never grew up with that, but there were 7-foot chain link fences all the way around the main campus. But this was outside. And there was some stuff that went on, and I was a little apprehensive about my safety. And so I heard only the comment was, uh, "No, I don't want to do that to him. Let's move on. Why? I'll tell you later." And the next day or next night, that same person came back, and they came, jumped the fence, and I heard footsteps outside the teachers' lounge where we were. And I walked out the door and I saw this blur in front of me. And it was this young man who hit the fence in 1 foot. And I should say this guy was probably all of maybe 5'6". So he was agile. He cleared the fence after just putting 1 foot on it, and he jumped down, and I said, "Hey." And he says, "Don't talk to me." And I'm not going to go into the vernacular, but he says, basically, "Don't bother me. I'll kill you." And I said, "No, you won't." And he looked at me like I slapped him. And Michael, I have no idea where that came from. As far as I'm not worried about you trying to kill me. And the rest of it was, he says, "Is your buddy with you tonight?" And I said, "Well, my partner is here, if that's what you're talking about." "Well, was that the same one from last night?" And I said, "No, he wasn't here." He says, "Well, there's got to be, because the guy that I saw was about 6 foot 8 to 7 foot tall, and he was very, very muscular and in pretty good shape. And you were down in the music room, and we were going to beat the crap out of you. And we saw him. We turned around and left."
Wow. Well, now you're getting into manifestations,
Uh-huh.
and that's outstanding.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're definitely protected. You're cued in.
Yeah. Because I had the opportunity to see him again. Fast forward, gosh, 20 years later, and we were buying property up in North Florida, and I saw him. And at that time, I was following some Native American ways pretty closely, and he presented himself to me as a very well dressed in full regalia Native American. And he looked at me and smiled and kept on walking. This is about 9 o'clock at night. I could see him just outside of the fires of the campsite that I had built. And I did solo trips from time to time, and this was one of those solos. And Michael, I went out and looked into the palms that were nearby, the scrub palms. I looked for footprints, and there were none.
Wow.
So I know him.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And that close relationship is what everyone should strive for, whether it's being able to actually see a spirit teacher in that form, or just know within your mind that they're there. And we're all capable of receiving. We're all normally spoken in thought. And I believe that having a foundation of faith is an advantage because people with a foundation of faith are already communicating with the spiritual realm,
Hmm.
usually in prayer and
Yeah.
usually in thought. And the communication with the spiritual realm is two-way. I
Yeah.
mean, we can communicate with them, they can communicate with us. And incoming thoughts have a different feel in our mind. It's a subtle difference, but it has a different feel in our mind than thoughts that we think. We can think anything that we want. We have that pesky little gift called free will.
Hmm.
And people say, well, why did I think that? That's not my thought. Why did it come into my mind? And we each have within our minds like a thought system, like a little mini solar system.
Hmm.
And you can control what you think and what you accept or want to reject that comes into your mind that is not in alignment with your thought process. And people a lot of times are not really aware of the difference between thoughts that they think and thoughts that are incoming.
So a question that I've got, Michael, is how do we know? How do we know when it's a guide that's trying to communicate with us and is reaching out to us, and it's not just, I'm going to say, just our mind playing tricks on us. So,
Normally, any communication that comes in that manner will come in when you're not thinking about anything at all. Driving in the car, not thinking about anything, radio turned off, and a thought comes into your mind and it says, I'd slow down up ahead if I were you. That's happened to me before, actually a number of times. I'm an aggressive driver, and I was driving on Interstate 75 heading to Florida through Georgia. My dad had retired down there, and he would spend 6 months in Bradenton, 6 months up in Ohio. And I had cruise set on 80. Speed limit was 70. They'll give you 10. They may not give you 11, but they'll give you 10. And radio turned off, not thinking about anything, and a thought came into my mind, and it said I'd slow down up ahead if I were you. I glanced in the rearview mirror, didn't see anything, shut cruise off on the steering wheel, let the car coast down to about 72, topped a little rise in the freeway. There sat a Georgia State Highway Patrol.
yeah.
Now, whether or not he would have pulled out after me at 80, like I said, they'll normally give you 10. Or if you see the patrol and you tap the brakes, they know you're paying attention. I
Yeah.
wasn't swerving through traffic, I was just cruising.
Yeah.
And I got past the State Highway Patrol, ran the cruise back up to 80, and said out loud in the car, thank you, Spirit.
Hmm.
And
And by
again, that's my mother's favorite expression. So people need to be able to differentiate between thoughts that they think and a thought that's incoming.
okay.
And once you learn how to do that, you're paying attention, it becomes just almost as natural as breathing.
Hmm. Can it be like a voice in your head?
Well, a voice in your head is a thought.
Hmm.
I mean, that's what a voice in your head is. If it's in your mind, it's a thought.
I mean, some people might talk about, "Well, I hear voices," that kind of a thing. And the first time that somebody says that and they say it in front of the person that has more control over them than what they'd like, is they might end up in a straitjacket. So
I
it's
actually, I was talking to a lady in Florida. I've done, are you familiar with Casadega
oh,
down in Florida?
absolutely. I lived within 5 miles of Casadega, and we've been there several times. So, and
I've done
Lilydale.
presentations there for my book, and I've done book signings in Casadega.
I sold my book there.
Okay. And how
Yeah.
about Lilydale? Do you know Lilydale, New York?
And that's some of the neat stuff about how all this stuff is a web of life when you think about it, Michael. Because the first church that I pastored in Forestville, New York, was 20 miles from Lilydale.
Wow.
And so they're always out there in the peripherals wondering, when is he going to pay attention? When is he going to wake up? Because I was going to ask, why is it that they would, why is it that my guide would present himself physically to me? I say physically, but so I
Sure.
could see him. And he didn't do it just once. I have seen him twice, and I knew of his existence in that other instance I was telling you about. So, the web of life is amazing to me about how all of it intertwines and we just keep moving along, la 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 la. And finally they said, "Oh, he got it."
Well, I'm a bit jealous because I've never actually seen anything, although my mother did, but hers were in the form of angels
Hmm.
standing beside her bed when she was in a hospital.
Yeah.
So when people are aligned with their spirit teachers, the confidence and comfort that it gives them, it's just it just makes you feel that there isn't anything that you can't do or
Mm.
can't get through because you're not alone.
Hmm. Yeah. And that's the essence of it, isn't it? Is to recognize, not that I can take on the world, but I am confident enough in myself, I'm confident enough in my guide and my helper that I will hopefully do whatever it is that I need to do and accomplish in this life. And they are there to help me achieve that if I
That's
listen,
true.
if I listen. And
That's
that's
true.
that's the other piece is learn to listen and don't second guess them.
Well, I had gotten involved in spiritual material uh, before my mother, she wasn't really sure. I had actually connected with a group in Cincinnati called Psychic World.
Hmm.
I did readings. I had
Hmm.
a table, a group called Psychic World, and I was able to do psychometry.
Yep.
And that's the ability to hold rings, watches, keys, anything that carries a person's
Sure.
vibration.
Yep.
I had a legal tablet, and people would sit down at my table, and I wouldn't pump them for information, engage in conversation, just ask their first name. And
Hmm.
they would give me something to hold, and I would just relax my mind and start to get a message,
Hmm.
sometimes page, page and a half. When it got to the end, it would stop. I would read it to them. Sometimes they would cry. And it was more confirmation as to what they were going through rather than actual prophecy.
Right.
So, Wilma Jean, my mother, in these messages and teachings that she received in the book, my book is titled An Angel Told Me So. But how do you know this to be true? An angel told me so. And the book is the first of 3 volumes. There's going to be 3 books in the series. And it's a collection of messages and teachings dictated directly from spirit teachers from the other side, dictated word for word through my mother, so I know the source. And she received these messages and teachings for 22 years.
Mm.
Now, she had been receiving messages for probably, I'd say, a good 10 years. And I can explain here shortly how these came to be. But she was hesitant about putting the messages and teachings in a book. They were a bit personal for her and for me. And she was working around the kitchen one day, and these words started to come into her mind. She knew it was incoming. She picked up pen and paper. She had beautiful handwriting, and she wrote this message out in longhand. And this was a message that she felt was confirmation she should put these messages and teachings in a book. She had been praying about it. May I share this message with you and your audience?
Oh, absolutely.
So, this is what she received. Emptiness is part of fulfillment. Let your resources fill the void left so that distinction of your purpose can be found. Expression is always self explanatory. Therefore, look inside and anchor all your beliefs beside those still waters that will take away your troubled view and renew your strength to recapture that which was lost, but is now found to be adequate to pursue the course set before you. And
Mm.
as you reconcile your being to represent those qualities that have been left intact, God will see to it that although circumstances have been trying, to say the least, your weariness will disappear as clouds once removed allow the sun to shine to dispel the gloom and darkness that has pervaded your countenance. And as once described before, a token of this presence will be deposited to your account and books recorded in his name.
Mm. Wow.
And she felt that was the answer that she was looking for, that she should put these messages and teachings in a book.
And she did.
Well, actually, she had passed away, and I wasn't able to publish the first volume
Hmm.
until she had passed away. But a lot of these messages and teachings are signed with the name of the spirit teacher presenting the message.
Right.
And when she was led to sit down and receive, she had set up an electric typewriter in her kitchen. And she would be led in her mind, we have a message for you. And she would go in, put a sheet of paper in the typewriter, drop down 5 lines, indent 5 spaces, just like you were going to do a letter.
Hmm.
And she would see 3 or 4 words just float into her mind and hang there. They would not go away until she typed them.
Uh-huh.
Once she typed those 3 or 4 words, they would just fade away and 3 or 4 more would show up. And
Uh-huh.
that's how she got these messages, full page, single space typed, many times with no paragraphs. And the spirit teachers presenting these messages repeatedly refer to themselves in first person.
Yep.
We feel, we believe, we advise.
Hmm.
Our view encompasses more than your view can comprehend. One line in a message said, "We hear the spirit cries above the words you speak." Who
Mm.
talks like that?
Yep.
I don't talk like that.
No.
And these are deep, profound teachings. But the interesting thing is, even though in the book, the messages in each session, she would receive a message addressed to her from her spirit teacher. And then she would receive a message addressed to me from my spirit teacher.
Uh,
But it's like these messages and teachings are woven with a universal thread. And everyone who has read these messages have said, well, this sounds like what I'm dealing with. This sounds like they're talking to me. And I tell people, I say, when you get the book, read each message once as it was given for my mother and given for me. Then read that same message again as if it's being presented for you and see what hits. And it's amazing what hits.
what you've just described is when I've done readings in the past. It's been years, and now um, I just wait that if somebody needs a reading, I don't advertise it anymore. I just figure they've come into my space and they need that part of me to communicate with them. And so I just open it up and we go from there. But the way that you just described that is very similar to what I remember and how I've heard them talk through me. And often it's the sense of not my guide or not my helper that's doing this and that's sharing this information. It's actually the guide and or helper of the person that I'm working with. And I have used tarot and I have used other divination tools, and people have asked me about, well, will you do it this way? And I said, sure, I'm happy to do it that way. And then off the cuff, somebody else would say, why do you use tarot? And I said, well, honestly, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but it's for me, it's a prop because the messages simply come through. And sometimes they do help. Sometimes they'll kind of key my brain enough to say, oh, I get it now. But all it is a prompt. It's not really, like you said earlier, it's not necessarily a case of foretelling the future or prophecy. It's more of a case of affirming of where you are, affirming what you're doing, affirming, your goals in life, because you know as well as I do that anyone, I say anyone, but most people that come to us to want to talk with us about spirit guides or they're looking for a reading or whatever, what they're looking for is affirmation of what they already know.
That's true. Or
Hmm.
a reason why.
Yes, absolutely. So it's just a very unique opportunity that we have, and I'd say even a responsibility that we have to convey that which is true for these people and not just say it of a nonchalant thing of, well, it's just like this, or try to read people. You know, I can I've been around long enough that I can read people, but that's not the same thing as doing a reading. Can
That's true.
actually I have that in my head. Can you explain that for our audience? I think you agree with me that there's a difference between reading people and doing a reading.
When you are approached by someone or just in passing, as you come across people here and there, um, each person puts out a vibration. And when you're reading someone, you're actually picking up on their vibration. And there's subtle information that's made known to your mind that you may not even realize or pay attention to. But you, right off the bat, you can decide if this is a person you can trust or a person you better watch out for. If
Hmm.
this is a person that you could be friends with or a person that actually is off on a tangent some way.
Hmm.
And I have told people, as we speak about psychics and people who read, that any psychic or reader worth their salt is going to tell you this information is not coming from me. This information is coming from your spirit guides, your spirit teachers. I'm simply relaying it to you.
Yes. 100%. Absolutely. Totally agreement.
And now, spirit mediums, people who can contact people who have crossed over,
Mm-hmm.
that's different.
Mm-hmm.
That's different because that is coming from people who have graduated. I tell people there is no death. We never really die. It's
That's
just
right.
graduation.
Mm-hmm.
We ride around in these bodies the way we ride around in our cars.
Right.
These bodies are just a vehicle to negotiate this physical plane. And I recommend uh, two movies, actually three, but I recommend two movies that will allow people to realize why we're here or where we are at and why we're here. Have you ever seen the movie Defending Your Life?
No. I'm gonna
You
write it
might want
down.
to, write that one down. Defending Your Life, and that has Albert Brooks and Meryl Streep in it.
Oh my gosh.
These are older movies.
Okay. Defending your life.
Defending Your Life, and the second movie is called Always.
Oh, absolutely. That I do
Richard
know.
Dreyfuss and Holly
Yes.
Hunter, and they're similar in concept. And then another movie that I really like that'll just give you a perspective is called The Last Mimsy,
Yes.
Mimzy,
Mm-hmm.
with the little girl,
Mm-hmm.
the kids, and they're all intense. They all have meaning. Those are just amazing, I think. And it lets people be comfortable with what we're talking about and
Yeah.
know that they're capable of receiving in this same manner, that we're all born with that innate ability.
Yeah. And side note, I don't want to go down this road too far, but a side note, as I understand, Audrey Hepburn was a very interesting person, and she was very much open to this type of thought process, I'll say.
Right.
And that was actually her last movie, as I recall, was Always.
That's what I've been read and found out too.
And there was a very profound statement that she made in that script. I don't know if it was a script or if she ad-libbed it. It wouldn't surprise me if she ad-libbed it. And I don't know that I'm going to paraphrase it even halfway correctly, but she was talking with Richard Dreyfuss, and Richard Dreyfuss had graduated, and he, of course, really wanted to get back with Holly Hunter, and he was doing everything in his power to do that. And she said something to the effect of, anytime we're doing something for ourselves without consideration for the other person, it's a waste of our spirit.
That's
And
true. A
and
waste of spirit is
a
the way
waste,
she phrased it.
yes, a waste of spirit.
Right.
What a marvelous insight that is, and it's so true that anything that I do, and if it's in the wrong motivation or inappropriate, it's just a waste. It's a waste of spirit, and it makes you stop and think, do I really want to waste my spirit?
And
Because
she said, you've had your time.
yeah,
You've had your time.
yep,
Now it's your obligation to help others.
yep,
So
profound.
those are outstanding. I can actually share some more with you, but I will do that later. On my website, spiritspeaks.com,
Mm-hmm.
when you first go to the website at the top, it says Spirit speaks to the hungry soul.
Hmm.
If you have a hungry soul, if you want to know, if you, I came across a post recently and it said, I don't want to just believe, I want to know.
Hmm.
And I believe that mindset is what's starting to surface with a lot of people. We've been told to believe and have faith, just believe, just have faith for 2,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
And people are, they talk about how attendance in church is down. A lot of people are searching, they want to know.
Yep.
They don't want to just believe, they want to know.
Yeah.
And these messages and teachings that Wilma Jean received from these spirit teachers, this is proof, real proof of the existence of a spiritual realm on the other side of this physical plane.
It
Now,
is.
those with the foundation of faith, they would call this spiritual realm heaven.
Yep.
But I believe that the spiritual realm is much more than just a place called heaven.
Oh, yeah.
And the spiritual realm exists adjacent to this physical plane. And we're separated by a veil, a vibration, a
Right.
frequency. We don't really know the medium that separates us from this spiritual realm. But again, the communication is two-way. We can reach out to the spiritual realm in thought or prayer and ask for protection, guidance, direction, support, and they will in turn bless us with the information that will help us along our way.
The thing that occurs to me as we're talking about this, it becomes for me, it's really second nature, as I'm sure it is for you, Michael, to communicate like this because my guides, my helpers, I just look at them as friends, as helpers, as just as relatives in some cases. Actually, one of them that I have, they were related to me many, many, many centuries ago. I found that out from them. But all that being said, some of this that I've learned, it just kind of, I'm going to say, it isn't meant to be glib, but it just kind of fell in my lap, and I just learned as I went along. But what advice would you offer to someone that's looking to develop their ability to connect with that realm?
The easiest way, I think, is to read information that others have received. And there's
Hmm.
all kinds of books and information out there. You just have to decide what you're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
On my website, again, spiritspeaks.com, it says for all sincere seekers of truth.
Hmm.
And then it says when the student is ready, a teacher will appear. And for me, that has been just so appropriate because as a seeker, you will draw to you information, guidance, people, events, books, movies, information that will help you take the next step on your path. And that information is just so easily and readily available if you can have an open mind.
Hmm.
And having an open mind is essential, but you also need to establish a filter, an aura of protection, because you are opening your mind.
Yep.
And people say, well, how do I make sure that nothing negative is going to come through as I open my mind and make myself available to my own spirit teachers? And I tell people, I think the best way, or one of the best ways, there's all kinds of different things that you can do, but I like affirmations.
Oh, good.
And there are a number of affirmations that you can say and repeat, not like a mantra, but information that you can surround yourself with this aura of protection. And I have one that came to me so long ago, I don't even remember. It's just a part of my life. And it said, let no thoughts, ideas, or information be made known to my mind that does not come from God or his direct representatives.
Hmm.
Now, you don't have to be religious to be able to believe that that will protect you from any negative information or anything that might try and slip into your thought system. And if anything does get through and you recognize that's not my thought, I didn't think that, where did that come from? Simply disregard it and send it out into the universe because it doesn't have to be a part of your thought system.
Mm-hmm.
Another affirmation that came to me, it said, I strive always, in thought and word and deed, to be a beloved son in whom you are well pleased.
Hmm. So a lot of these, when we think about them that way, they are affirming the positive and seeking the positive and the sense of doing no harm.
And refusing, I mean, you absolutely refuse to allow any negative thoughts, ideas, or information to be made known to your mind.
Right.
It's not part of your thought system, and you control your thought system.
Yep. That's the way to do it. And I remember that one of the things that's also helpful to me is the old line of how do you become proficient or good at what you do? And that's three words: practice, practice, practice.
Well, that's true. That's true. I had mentioned that my grandmother was a pastored a small Pentecostal church.
Hmm.
And my grandmother would receive sermons dictated to her mind in thought that she would preach in church, and even verses to songs. And in the book, An Angel Told Me So, in the photo gallery, there are 6 verses that my grandmother received lying in a hospital in Columbus, Ohio. She had diabetes. They didn't think she was going to make it. And she was praying, and these words started to come into her mind. She had pencil and paper on a nightstand, and she wrote these 6 verses down. And reading those verses, they'll almost bring you to tears.
Wow.
So I had, when I was first looking for a publisher, I was on a number of different publisher websites.
Yep.
One of the websites asked questions about your work. One of the questions was, what makes your material unique? Why would anyone want to read this? Great question.
Yep.
And I was sitting where I'm sitting right now on my computer. I didn't really even ask for an answer. I just relaxed my mind. And an answer started to be dictated to my mind. It was 12 lines long. And I just typed it down. When it got to the end, it just stopped. And I have read this answer to a number of hosts on the air. More than one has teared up. I don't expect you to do that.
Oh, don't be
But
surprised.
anyway, may I share this answer with you and your
Please.
audience?
Yeah.
So the question was, what makes your material unique? And this is the answer that I was given. The uniqueness of any material is in the manner in which it touches the soul. An open and searching mind pulls the soul and the body in which it inhabits onward and upward with hunger and determination in its quest for spiritual nourishment, ever mindful that the path upon which we walk is the path toward God. Lives lived, experiences endured, goals accomplished, and loved ones lost are all encounters upon that path. Strive always for the highest possible communication with our Heavenly Father. Believe in yourself, as the Father within you is guiding, leading, directing, and comforting you upon this journey that we call life. Blessings be upon you as you walk your chosen pathway.
Sums it up.
And I take no credit for that.
Yeah. Do you work with individuals still and do readings for people?
I don't normally, like you said, we most of all of us can read people, but I don't really have the opportunity to sit down in a session and do a reading. When I do book signings, I've had people ask that, and we talked about Lilydale, New York,
Mm-hmm.
the world's oldest and largest community of spirit mediums and readers, been
Mm-hmm.
around 144 years.
Yep.
Actually, have you seen the HBO documentary on Lilydale?
Oh man, you're just showing all kinds of cool stuff. No, I haven't. Because I
You
was
can,
because I've been there.
right.
Yeah.
I know all the mediums in that documentary, and
Mm.
you can watch that HBO documentary for free on YouTube.
Okay.
So go to YouTube and in the search box type in "No One Dies in Lilydale."
Wow.
Lilydale's 2 words.
No one dies in Lilydale.
And when the choices come up, look for the one posted by KL Audio. KL Audio. That one is free. I think some of the others might be $1.99. And there are also a couple of choices where the print, the copy of the documentary is not as good as the one posted by KL Audio.
Okay.
But Gerda starts out at the beginning. She's really good. Jonathan White, he was really a nice guy. He passed away early last spring.
You're talking about affirmations, and I've used one through the years. And Michael, it's one of the most powerful ones that I can possibly imagine for people that have people or stuff or situations or jobs or anything that's in our path, and it just continues to bring us down. We try to separate ourselves from it, it just won't go away. And that, you want me to share that affirmation?
Absolutely.
Okay, the affirmation goes this: I now release you to your good. The good of one is the good of all. And the only thing that you begin that affirmation with is usually it's a person. And I've used this in sessions with people as well, is that you have 3 circles and it's like a triangle, and you have 2 circles that are facing each other, and you have a third circle up above, which makes the peak. Just even with you and I, Michael, right now, we are those 2 bottom circles. We are communicating in that method, in that way. But what we don't know, well, we do, but what we can't realize is that in that third circle above is where our higher selves are communicating in words that we cannot understand and we can't communicate. And yet it's happening.
Right.
So we have created a dynamic and we have created something very real and very alive. And I talked before the recording about animism and everything has life, and this is certainly life. The power of that particular affirmation is it doesn't do away with that third circle above that you and whoever it is that you're trying to change and get away from. It changes the dynamic of it. You put the name at the first of that, and it says, I'm going to say Joe. Joe, and the I is the I am. It's the divinity, it's the divine side, it's the loving, caring, sharing person, the higher self within me. That's the I. That I now releases you. The you is your higher self, regardless of whether that person is a jerk or what have you, there is a higher self to them. I now release you to your good. So I'm releasing you to your good. And what's the result? The good of one is the good of all.
I like that. I'll share one more quick thing with you. On my website, there is tabs at the top, bio
Mm-hmm.
for me, bio for my mother. And
Mm.
there's a tab for a television interview that my mother gave in Cincinnati.
Okay.
Posted on her interview is a message from volume 2 of the book. And this was the only time in a session where she was led to sit down and receive. Two different spirit teachers moved in the same session,
Mm.
gave two different messages, and signed two different names.
Mm.
And it was obvious that the second teacher was a different teacher than the first because the whole cadence and phrasing of the message is different. Now, that first teacher's message, it was little more than a long paragraph, but the line next to the last line at the end is the line that made me sit up and take notice. May I share this message with you and your audience?
Please do.
There is a resurrection period through which man must travel in order to come into the realm of things godlike. You are to consume and digest all that is given here, as this comes from one highly qualified to meet the needs of this generation. You are not the sole property of yourselves. God still holds the everlasting command over your being, and in him must one take refuge. You are to be considered as one who has been stripped of all belongings and left to die by the wayside. In this manner, are you then open to any help that would be forthcoming? You are by your very nature ones who would depend on your own intellect to carry you through. However, by giving of your soul into the hands of God, do you prosper and develop more freely into that which denies the outcome of some situations, knowing full well that it is the hand of God leading and directing you, so that you may arise victorious in the end. There is never a time when you will be without the Father, nor his ever-loving approaches to see that you follow the path that directs you homeward. Take note that we say homeward, as your heavenly Father so resides in that vast insurmountable environment of time and space, so shall ye abide in joint communication with him by the grace with which he covers you and by your ability to accept this grace and use it for your own development. There are others here who wish to make themselves known to you,
Mm.
so I will step aside at this time. My love and devotion follows you as you trot onward but ever faithful to your goal. That message was signed, Your Loving Guide.
Mm.
Now, my question, what do you mean there are others here who wish to make themselves known to you? Who are the others and where is here?
Mm.
Are you in relation to us on this physical plane?
Yeah. And that's where we want to go with that when you think about it. I really want to
Now,
know
that
who. Go ahead.
Oh, I started to say that spirit teacher moved out, allowed another spirit teacher to move in, and he gave a page and a half, single space typed. And I won't read that, but the last paragraph, these spirit teachers in these messages, they repeatedly end these messages with either a profound and deep last paragraph or a profound last sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the last paragraph that this second teacher presented in this message. You are not as sheep herded here and there, but you are likened unto the lamb that is cared for individually, nourished and loved until the full and total development allows it to be master of itself. So is man so kept and denied only those things that would not in the long run nourish his spirit. God is all wise and loving in his dispensations. We are not to judge the workings of our Father, nor are we to judge each other. Work always to improve your own beings, for in the end time there lies your soul, with all the nourishment that you have given it, totally dependent upon the outcome of your intentions. And that message was signed, Your Loving Spiritual Teacher.
Wow.
Two different teachers, two different messages, two different cadence, two different perspectives.
And yes, absolutely. You can see the difference in the way one is presented and the other one presents.
In these messages and teachings, these spirit teachers repeatedly refer to themselves in first person and usually in plural. We feel, we believe, we advise. Our view encompasses more than your view can comprehend. But many of the messages and teachings are signed with a singular name, your
Mm-hmm.
loving guide, your loving spiritual teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like when Wilma was led to sit down in these dedicated sessions, there was a collaboration of spirit teachers that would gather and together, all of one mind, would share this message and teaching, yet it would be signed by a singular teacher's name.
And that's similar when I comes to mind is when I've done journey work and within shamanic practices, for an example, uh, we have the upper world, the lower world, and middle world. And the upper world is typically that is the place of teaching. The middle world is where we are in this plane, and the lower world is typically the place of those that have not they've graduated but they haven't reincarnated, and so that's kind of a holding pattern, and sometimes it's also a place of healing. It's reserved for those that are healers down below. So those are the three realms. And I'm saying that in the upper realm is I've gone there in journey work, and which is basically really deep meditation for anyone wondering. And there's a lot more to be said about journey work, but that's the essence of it. Um, to go up into the higher realm, and I've often been in situations there where you find yourself sitting at a fire, and you have a circle. It's interesting too, Michael, that anytime that I've ever been in a group like that in deep meditation and I sense other guides and other helpers around me, it's always a circle. It's never linear. And that's a message in and of itself. There's no leader here. We're all together and we're all equal and we're all here to help and nourish and support each other. And there have been times where I've gone up into that upper realm and tears just flow because it's you're filled with joy and you're filled with happiness. Uh, the question that I do have is this: uh, we mentioned about how these writings are given, and I alluded to it a little bit in the beginning when we were talking about my primary guide of mine. Is this? I got the impression from him in conversations that I've had that he presented himself to me as a Native American in that time, in that place in my life, because I would appreciate it and I would understand it. I would accept him quicker. Many years later, I had a sense of someone who is Asian, and he told me his name, that I'm the same one. And I asked him, I said, "Why did you change?" He says, "I didn't change. You did." So my perception changed. It's still the same guide. So the question I'm getting all about this is, in your experience, have you found that these guides and helpers may shift their appearance to help us to understand them better?
I have never had that experience. I've never seen anything. I've just been spoken to in thought, and it's a connection that is so firm and solid that it's almost constant, continuous. I was driving today. I went down for a appointment that I had, and there were two lanes in the highway, and I just thought out of habit, which lane should I get in? And they said, stay in the left lane.
Hmm.
And for 4 miles where I was going down into this town, I hit every green light, every single one. Never
Don't you
had
love
to, never
don't you
had to
love it?
stop. And I mean, I knew, and it builds trust.
Yep.
It's the trust that you build, again, knowing that you're not alone, that we're all a product of our choices and decisions. And if you have the advantage of being able to recognize your spirit teachers, you make so much better choices and decisions. There
Yep.
still are choices and decisions, but we have advice, guidance, direction, and support to help us along our way.
Yep. Yep. Listeners have heard me say this before, but for your benefit, one of my favorite lines is, if you want to make the gods laugh, tell them your plans. And the verse that comes to mind, it just came in, thank you, was my ways are how help me with it. My ways are not your ways. My ways are higher than yours. I want to say it was either out of the Psalms or out of Proverbs, but my ways are basically my ways are higher than your ways. And it doesn't mean it's a hierarchy. It is a higher intention. It is a greater intention. It is an intention that will bring fruit as opposed to your ways, which will be fine. But if you really want to achieve something of a higher level, try to look at the ways that I'm trying to share with you. And
Right.
that's the sense a lot of times that I get.
And people are so hungry for this
Mm,
for this type of material.
yeah.
I mean, they're just hungry. They want to know. Again, they don't want to just believe, they want to know. And to be able to present this positive material with real spirit teachers and information that is applicable to everyone that reads it, I think it's just another step on their path. And hopefully, you're doing what I'm doing. And what we're doing is just shining a light on a path and
Mm-hmm.
say, here, take a look at this. We're not directing, we're not ordering. We're just saying this is available.
Yeah.
And all you need to do is take a look at it. I would recommend it, and then let them be the judge of how they feel about it.
Yeah. I've often said too with people that I work with, I said, I'm not going to pull you along, push you along. I'm just the guy with a flashlight. It's up to you to take the walk.
And that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
And when the student is ready, a teacher will appear.
Yep.
And as we make our way, all the people that we get to talk to and deal with, um, they cross our path because they're ready. And we do the same thing, with each other. I mean, look at the conversation that we're having today.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's the same stuff, but I think when you say the people are hungry, the people really want the truth, and you see a movement that direction. There's so much to be said about people that'll say, "Well, I want to return to the old ways." Well, we are communicating, several hundred miles apart. And sometimes, when I'm talking with people, we are thousands and thousands of miles apart in different time zones and different countries and continents. And the technology is phenomenal. But what we can always do is learn from the traditions that were there before, and all we need to do is modify them enough so that they work within the parameters that we have today, but don't lose sight of the foundation.
I agree. I agree.
If we lose sight, or if we lose a faith in the foundation, now we might create a problem. And I say problem, and I say that with tongue in cheek because it's it has so many different possibilities, doesn't it? When I say problem, that's that's so subjective that it could go any direction at all. But I think we need to stay true to where we are and really listen to those guides, listen to those helpers. They're all around us and practice, practice, practice. Do you have on your website, are you offering, you've got some wonderful books. Do you offer classes or anything like that?
I do not. I've had people say that, well, you should teach. And I said, I'm a teacher and I share this information. Now, Wilma Jean, she actually had classes in spiritual unfoldment,
Hmm.
and she did a series of classes over a number of months. And she had a good group, probably 35, 40 people that would attend her classes. So I'm not doing that. But and when you were talking about a problem, the word that came into my mind was obstacles.
Yes.
And, people have, whether it's because of their faith and they're just so afraid to release their faith. I mean, you have that foundation of faith, but just know that you can take it to the next level. And there are people who just are just so locked in to the fact that we have this one life, one existence, and then forever and ever, we're going to go to the good place or the bad place.
Mm.
And I knew a lady one time that had a son who was constantly getting into trouble. From the time he was 14 to the time he was 30, the money that they spent on bail and fines and attorneys, it was just really devastating for them. And she was Baptist. She, carried her Bible around with her. She went to church on Sundays and Wednesday evenings, and she knew the information, the spiritual information and material that I was involved in. And she just knew she was going to heaven, and she firmly believed that hell existed. And I asked her one time, I said, is there anything that your son could do, anything at all, that would cause you not to want to give him another chance? And
Mm.
she just put her head down and said no. And I said, what makes you think God loves us any less? Do you really believe that based upon this blink of an eye existence, that we're going to be sentenced to eternal damnation and punishment with no chance for reprieve, no chance for the ability of a do-over because we were stupid, because we had bad parents, chose bad friends? Why would you think that God would do that? And I don't, that's why I just have always had a problem with hell and even with heaven as a place where you would go for all eternity based upon this one shot, this blink of an eye existence, to do what? I mean, if there's no choices and decisions to be made, if everything is taken care of, if everything is bliss, how can you continue to learn?
Hmm.
So, that some, people with a foundation of faith, that's one of the things that you're going to deal with and say, well, what if you're wrong? What if it really is that way? I don't want to take the chance.
Mm.
Okay. Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Hmm. What comes to mind is this is truly, when you think about it, Michael, it's an intrinsic part of us, this ability to communicate. And sometimes people would ask me, "Wow, how did you ever get that gift?" And I said, "It's not a gift. It simply is. It's reality. It's how I accept it as part of my being." In traditional Chinese medicine, they would tell us that we have two types of qi. We have intrinsic qi and we have acquired qi. The intrinsic qi is the qi that is given to us by not only ourselves in previous incarnations, but it's also the qi that has been passed on to us by our physical parents and our ancestors. All that qi is given to us at birth. And when I say at birth, I mean at conception, in the sense that they would tell you that in their way of looking at this information is the kidneys are the source of our chi, our life, it's our life force is there in the kidneys. And they would say, well, why do you believe that? And they said that in their understanding, that's the first organ that actually develops. And they
That's
say,
interesting.
yeah, and they say that so you're given all the chi you're going to be given in those kidneys, in that life force. That's intrinsic chi. Acquired chi is the chi that we acquire in this incarnation. And that's done through food, it's done through water, it's done through spiritual activities like meditation, things of that nature, energy work. All this stuff helps to re energize those kidneys. That is the acquired chi. And I've often used the terminology or the example of you like to drive. I've already gathered that. When you're driving down the road and you see that needle start to move, and it's moving as you look at it down and to the left, and it's moving toward the E, and all of a sudden it's in the E, and you're 35 miles from the nearest gas station, the miracle is that we have a little thing called a reserve tank. And the reserve is typically a gallon and a half. And I say, well, I'm just going to run it on fumes. I'm going to run it on the reserves, and I will make it to the gas station. If you don't make it to the gas station, what happens? You're dead. Your car stops, and you hopefully have a nice truck driver or nice automobile driver that is driving by, and you just go, help. In life, it's not like that. In the same scenario, I like to say that we are keeping that fuel level up with the acquiring of chi. And occasionally what happens is I drain myself so much, I run on reserves. And I truly believe that when that reserve runs out, that's when this incarnation finishes. And sometimes you can't stop it. Well, you can never stop it because at
Right.
some point it will stop. You will run out, and that's okay. But that's why they even say, they being those who have, of this thought process, would tell you that's why you have interesting longevities in the people that move this way. And I would say it's the same way with us. But at the same token, I don't know if I'm going to be here tomorrow. So what
You
do I
will.
do? So what do I do today? Hey, that's
You
true.
will.
I may not be here in this physical form,
Right.
but how long do I have in this physical form? I don't know, but it doesn't matter. What matters to me is what can I do today to create a better life for myself and for others. So, yeah.
And if people can just know that they have that innate ability, that they're born with that innate ability, and allow themselves to receive, to be receptive with the affirmations and the filters that we've suggested,
Mm-hmm.
and their path will be guided
Mm-hmm.
by this work.
And you said earlier a magical word, a little four-letter word that's magical, and that word is open. Stay open. Your mind, allow your mind and your thought processes to be open to these possibilities. And it may be strange for that person, wouldn't you agree, in the beginnings? But then,
Depending on their background,
Mhm.
again, it's the obstacle tends to be a religious indoctrination,
Mhm.
for lack of a better word.
Right.
And I there are the Bible is a sacred and holy book,
Mm.
but people don't realize how the Bible came to be. There's an outstanding documentary, A&E, the Arts and Entertainment Channel. They had a series, and it's been years ago, called Mysteries of the Bible.
Right.
And you can still get that at the library, but I think it was like 18 episodes.
Mhm.
Well, the last two were the best two of all, and they were titled Who Wrote the Bible?
Mhm. So something time you warned us ahead, you warned me ahead of time. That time slips by when we have our conversations like this. So let me ask you this. And this has been a delightful conversation. I truly enjoyed it. I think it's wonderful. And the importance of being able to communicate with guides, helpers, whatever you want to call them, that they're here to help us. But Michael, what does Michael do to create a better life for himself?
My life is this work, and this is my mission in this lifetime to share this material and share this information. Um, I wasn't going to share this, but I will share a personal message, as a message that I was given. I used to do satellite dishes. I owned a satellite company. And I came home from work one evening and went upstairs to change clothes. And the words greatness and spirit came into my mind. I knew it was incoming. I picked up pen and paper, uh, and I started taking these words down, and they were coming so fast I was scribbling to keep up. It wasn't like the message that I received in answer to the question, what makes your material unique? And I even had trouble typing it up the next day because I had scribbled so fast, I had trouble reading some of the words. But this was a personal message that was given to me. But I feel that it applies to all of us who are in this work. May I share this message with you?
Mm-hmm.
Greatness in spirit shall touch the lives of many whom you will come into contact with. Hearts and lives will be touched and changed by your presence. Enable yourself, by the will of your being, to respect and respond to the changes in individuals as you become aware of the true potential of your spirit. In the eyes of God, thou hast made thyself worthy of all the riches and gifts of spirit that shall be forthcoming unto you. Be as you will in relationship to the Holy Spirit that inhabits and dwells within thy being at this time. Look always to the future with anticipation and gladness, for thou hast made thyself a living receptacle for the Spirit of God, and all good things shall come to thee.
Mm. Those are beautiful words.
Now, that's a
And
pretty good personal message
I'd
for someone
say
to receive. But
it
again,
is.
I believe that, that applies to all of us who are in this work.
And it's just a matter that like you came home, you're changing your clothes, and if I can kind of intervene in a sense with maybe what happened is you stopped the process when you heard the two words. You stopped what you were doing because you recognized with an open heart and an open spirit and an open mind that you are receiving this information and you need to stop doing what you're doing long enough to write it down. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And would you say that's pretty good advice to all of us? That when these promptings come, unless you're driving the car, and if you're driving the car, just tell them wait. And I've learned that they will wait, but um, just take the time to listen to the words. Take the time to listen to the promptings because they only have our highest and greatest good in their hearts and minds and in their intentions. And to listen to those words and to listen to those guides and to listen to their promptings will make us better people, right?
They have our best interests at heart.
Absolutely. Are there any other thoughts that you would like to share? Time has flown.
Yeah, I apologize for taking so much time, but it just flowed. Um, the only thing that I will share is that, again, my website is spiritspeaks.com, and my book, An Angel Told Me So, is available on the website. It's available through Barnes and Noble. It's available through Ingram. Ingram is my national distributor, so any independent bookstore across the country can order because they all deal with Ingram. And the book is also available on Amazon.
Okay.
I have a contact page on my website. I have a great links page where I recommend and offer information on the Urantia book and an outstanding book on Edgar Cayce. I'm sure you know who Edgar Cayce was.
Yep.
And there is a book, there's been hundreds of books written on Edgar Cayce,
Oh, yeah.
but the one that I recommend is a book by Sidney Kirkpatrick.
Mm-hmm.
And it's simply titled Edgar Cayce, An American Prophet.
Yep. This has been very rewarding and very affirming. And I certainly do appreciate you taking your time to share with us today, Michael. The work that you're doing, don't stop doing it. The work that you're doing is profound. The work that you are doing is holy. The work that you're doing just helps to build lives. And for that, we are truly thankful. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Well, that's our show for this week. I want to extend a very special thank you to each one of you who have been listening to the program. And if this is your first time, welcome to Toward a Better Life. Keep listening for insights. And thank you again to Michael McAdams for helping us understand how to and be comfortable with connecting with those on the other side of the veil. You can find links in the show to connect with Michael McAdams, his work, and how to get your copy of An Angel Told Me So, again, right through the show notes. If you're seeking insights and advice on how to create a better life for yourself, and if you'd like to dive into self-care, self-development, distant shamanic work, Reiki, readings, drop me a line, kevin@towardabetterlife.com, for your free discovery call, and let's begin your journey. You can also visit my website, towardabetterlife.com, for past episodes, blog entries, ways to enhance your spiritual journey, and a few products to assist you on that journey. And just a short note, I've just gotten in to find out that I've missed a few emails that have been sent to me, and I've responded to them, and just keep in mind that I'm going to be checking that a little closer now. Send all your inquiries to me, kevin@towardabetterlife.com. I'll get back to you. Please subscribe and follow Toward a Better Life through your favorite podcast platform, and please leave a review on Apple and Spotify podcast. It helps to spread the word about the podcast and help to create a better life for us one and all. If you have any questions, if you'd like to share your story, your music, your prose, if it's an audio file, just send it to me as an MP3. Or if you want to be my guest, just write to me, kevin@towardabetterlife.com. Until next week, enjoy your spiritual journey toward a better life.